Welcome back to Tea with HRT, where we talk about the people side of business and what it really takes to lead teams well. I'm Brenda, Director of Marketing here at HR Transformed, and I'm joined by our CEO and founder, Allyns. As we wrap up Pride Month, we don't want the conversation to end here. Today, we're going to be talking about what inclusive leadership looks like at work and how we can carry that commitment into the rest of the year. So, supporting LGBTQ plus employees becomes part of how we lead every day and not just something that we focus on in June.
Today, we're joined by Sandy Gould, who serves as the Chief People Officer of GLAAD, and that's GLAAD, GLAAD, if you haven't seen it before, and brings a powerful perspective on LGBTQ plus inclusion and workplace culture. So, Sandy, welcome to Tea with HRT.
Thank you. It's amazing to be here, especially at the end of what has been a very powerful Pride Month, in a very important moment in time where we're continuing to push to accelerate acceptance, ensure equality, make sure there's representation, and most importantly, make sure that every single person on this planet has a freedom of identity to live as who they are and who they want to be.
Amazing.
I know you think about Pride Month in the context of workplaces and leadership. What kind of comes to mind first?
So I think it's important that we define leadership. Leadership is the idea of helping a group of people achieve a common goal while operating from a place of authenticity. And that's what draws us to powerful leaders, is their ability to be authentic, to speak their mind about what they believe, what their ideas are, what is different about the way they think, and then to help put that into action and support other people in doing that. And I think if we all reflect on powerful leaders and mentors in our lives, we'll see that common denominator in every great leader, that that's what they're capable of doing. So when you think about an organization's culture, the most powerful way a culture comes together, and a culture is a feeling, it's also when a group of people have figured out how to create together successfully. It has to do with identity, it has to do with inclusion, how you're a part of the group, why you matter, how you're supported, and how your voice and your unique perspective play a role in the creation of that culture and of what that organization or community is really building and creating to change the world. So Pride Month is a very powerful moment for organizations and cultures to embrace a population that is different, unique, creative, brings light and joy and creativity and fun, and also faces a lot of challenges, especially right now in a very divided world. And so nothing tells you more about the support and embrace of who you are than when someone has your back. In fact, something you're probably all very familiar with is that in most surveys where people are asked about when they trusted their manager the most or when they felt leadership and support from an organization they worked for were at its highest point, they will tell you singularly the answer, I know they had my back,
Mhm.
right? In tough moments, in challenging moments, if I made a mistake, if I was challenging the norm of an idea with a different perspective or approach, and my boss or the leadership of the organization stood by me, that is the greatest testament, right? When we all think about great relationships in our lives, those are the great relationships
Yeah.
that through challenging moments, they're there and they're always there, right? So Pride Month is this month of celebrating. And yeah, it's celebrating for the LGBTQ. But the truth is, anytime you celebrate someone's difference, you are celebrating everybody's difference and everyone's right to that difference, right? I happen to believe that difference is the most fundamental and central superpower in who we are. I also think it's the reason for living. It's because we're all here with a difference and we're going to share that difference, connect to those differences, and then create and change the world through those differences. So Pride Month to me is an explosion of colors and a symphony, really, of different identity and different expression and the way a song is created. And we bring all those differences together and celebrate that. And so I think for organizations, this is now a critical and crucial time for organizations to show what they really value and
Mhm.
to support that with action, um, expression of value, but then also implementation to support those values. And again, making people feel like who I am personally, individually matters, as well as being part of a team and a community. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And Sandy, what patterns are you seeing from these organizations? Like what's progress look like in organizations and what still feels like it's just on the surface and performative?
So it's a great question. Progress is when you include diverse communities, and let's say the LGBTQIA for a second, when you include them in designing policy, when you include them in co-design of your culture, right? When you make sure that as you're building processes for how work flows, literally how people get work done, you're talking to your employees and all the different communities to understand perspectives, insights, innovation, and sensitivities, and then asking them to help you design that. to figure out the best ways that people and teams are going to work together. So action throughout the year that brings employees and communities into co-design, to look at policy, to think about process. I'd say number two is doing education throughout the year. And that means letting people come together for a lunch and learn and hear about what the LGBTQIA values and is experiencing going into Pride Month or throughout the year, what they've experienced, what their aspirations are, where they draw strength, right? And this is true for any community too. Um, I think so. Doing those educational forums and also connection forums, so just bringing communities together, the LGBTQIA, but also intersectionally across all the different diverse communities you have and all the people you have in your organization. So I think it's education. I think it's co-design of policy, process, and culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's also things that activate the community, celebration, onboarding of new employees. So when you put onboarding processes together, you're trying to help accelerate the flow of information of what you as an organization have learned to new employees. So what they see in the interview, what they see in onboarding, that's like the face of the company. It's also the values expression and it's the priorities, right? So I don't know if people think about that, but whatever we onboard someone to is what we think matters the most.
Mm-hmm.
What we know they need to know to both be successful and included in the culture. So they should see a heck of a lot of diversity at the point of onboarding. They should hear about the ERG activations and the important role ERGs play in helping to mobilize and activate that community. And that's not just for social justice. That's because we believe difference plus imagination equals innovation. That means your greatest superpowers are coming out the more we cultivate different people, as many different people as we can in different communities, and then support their strengths and their ability to participate. So I think so those are some of the things I think that really, and again, remember, it's a powerful signal for the LGBTQIA plus. It's a powerful signal for every other employee in the organization who's individual and different in some way, and then certainly the diverse groups who've been under extreme pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all of that really can lift a culture up.
And, we talk about ERG groups and we talk about some of these resources that companies can put behind and really be above bar and not just surface level. And our clients, some of them are just really small,
Mm-hmm.
very small, 5 employees to maybe, under 100 or so. And for those teams, what does like a thoughtful, values aligned approach? And you talked a little bit about onboarding. That can absolutely be part of a smaller or mid-sized company's approach. But what are some other maybe creative ways that there can be a little bit more of a focus on it, but knowing that they lack the resources and the time?
I would tell you that I've spent half my career in large organizations and I spent half my career in startup, mid-size, small. And I believe that even in mid-size and small, you can be so guidant and supportive about what you value, how to work in an environment, how to be successful, what matters to the organization, and the critical part that person plays, and the superpowers that are unique to them that they bring to drive success. That whether you're onboarding for 10,000 people or for 50 or for five, I think the principles are pretty much the same, which is how do we help, how do we accelerate your time to impact? How do we ensure your inclusion? How do we map for you what has driven success? And then how do we illustrate where we are open to you imprinting the company and helping to change it, bringing that difference that will drive innovation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the things I've always loved when I joined small organizations is how quickly you can get to know all the people.
Yeah.
And hear all their different perspectives. So one wonderful thing that GLAAD did, I joined the organization about 2 years ago, and after I joined, before I started, they lined up groups of people from across the organization every week as I was winding down my other job to just jump on a call with me and get to know me. And we talked mostly about comic books and superpowers, because of course they'd all heard that I was like a super nerd about that stuff, and about queer culture and history and the great things GLAAD had done. As a kid, I grew up with GLAAD as a North Star from a time when I was young, no one was queer because it was still all in the closet. And GLAAD was one of the first North Stars to bring that existence out into the open. And so just hearing from people who've been here 5, 10, 20, 26 years, amazing to just hear the things they did that changed culture. Because GLAAD amplifies and unleashes and changes culture. It transforms culture by communications, consulting, by connection, by forging community, by broadening the lens of perception so that people can see through the noise to the truth and to connect to each other, brings people to the table. And so I think anytime a small organization wants to bring resources to bear, the most important things they can do are do a total share of who they are, have everyone involved in that. That's the big advantage, right? You join a 10,000 person company, you don't get to meet everybody, at least not for a long time, if ever. You join a smaller organization, you can meet everyone pretty quickly. You can get the benefit of all those perspectives and experiences and difference which then really super validates the fact that you're bringing difference too. And that's a unique power, I think, and a unique asset. Um, and those things make a tremendous difference to just how quickly someone feels like, okay, I belong here. People know who I am.
Right.
When I had those GLAAD meetings, one thing they did that I loved, and I've done this before too, is when you hire someone, send out information about that person before they join. So then when they show up, people go, oh yeah, I know who you are. I've heard about you. We were excited for you to arrive. I remember when I joined Disney, weeks before I started at Disney, one of the people who was going to be on my future team, Tracy, the head of campus recruiting, reached out to me just to welcome me and say how excited they were. And it just had such dramatic impact on me that, wait, they're already thinking about me. They already know about me. They're excited. And it demystified, it decloaked something that, is intimidating to all of us when we go into something new and unknown. So creating that familiarity and that connection is very empowering. And that's the other thing, agency. The biggest thing you can do is create agency in each person. And, once people arrive like on their first day asking them for their opinions and perspectives, people be like, well, I don't know anything yet. But it just shows a validation, right, that people are looking for. And if you can accelerate that, I think that's really powerful. So that's what I would say about small organizations is that they have the power to do that, right? And to customize it. And that's a big thing too, that of course we're all talking about a lot now. But I do think the most powerful thing about a culture besides being inclusive is being personal. So inclusivity, agency, and personal,
Mm.
because we're all personal, right?
Yeah.
And I have a huge, huge bias towards personal. I always think life is more interesting when who you are is shared in what you're doing, whether you're in an organization of 1, 2, 5, 5,000, 500,000, and whether you're in a commercial organization or a nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
I just think life is meant to be personal.
And, I think Brenda's next question is going to touch on the most personal relationship at work, which is with your manager.
Yes.
So if a manager is listening and they want to show up as a better ally and advocate, what are a few practical everyday behaviors that they can start with that don't require a huge budget?
Great question. First and foremost is engage and show an interest. So if you're a manager and your employee is, as an example, part of the LGBTQIA plus, just start with getting to know them and learning about their career and the abilities they bring and their aspirations for their career and how they want to contribute, as well as sharing what you want from them and need from them and hope for them. But then also talk about who they are and what that means and what that's meant in showing up in the workplace. What's been important, what's been supportive, what's been helpful, what have they found in their experiences, both the good and the bad, right? I think those things go such a long way. I remember back in COVID, when COVID happened and then the tragic murder of George Floyd, people were really worried. They did not know what to do. Do we talk about it? Do we not? Do people want to talk about it? Do they not? And it was just one of those moments of you have to engage and you have to check in on people and you have to show concern. And you can say, would you like to talk about it or not? Right? Maybe you just want to sit here together and work together or just share the moment or just have peace and calm. Or maybe you don't want to talk about it. But again, what you're doing is you're showing them what matters. And the more a person starts to feel that, I think the more they feel they're part of what's going on. They're part of the culture and the fabric. And when someone is valued, it builds trust. And once trust is built, anything's possible. That's where I think humans have unlimited potential, especially together. But I mean, to reflect on an example of right now. So we're in a time where we have a fractured state of media, something we've done a lot of research on. We call it divided states of media. And in that research, we're just showing a lot about how much media is being used, weaponized, manipulated, everything, right? And has been, and the verification culture that's going on. But in all of this, for instance, as we came towards Pride Month, we heard from a lot of people and clients, donors, sponsors, and partners. And then I heard from a lot of HR contacts out there that I've worked with forever. They're like, oh, we hear that corporations are pulling out, support is pulling back, support is going, negative for the LGBTQ in the country. And, it just strikes us again and again because we're doing all this research that there's a big difference between the perceived risk and the reality of what's going on. So as people were reaching out and saying that, one of the things we released in a report and I guided some of my peers on is 14% of the country don't support LGBTQ. 14%. It's a very small number. 64% of US adults believe that organizations should be supporting LGBTQ, a very large majority of the country. That's the 9% that are LGBTQ across the country and 55% of allies. When you think about an upcoming generation, Gen Z and millennials, they're 23% LGBTQ. That's more than double what it was when I was growing up. Actually, it's almost quadruple what it was when I was growing up, or
Interesting.
whatever those numbers were. Right. And so your reaction is just a perfect example. That was the reaction we got from people. And like, wait, that's not at all what we're hearing. Of course it's not. because now we're in this culture where everyone is shaping a narrative. And I think I'm bringing this point out because organizations can make sure that the narratives that are real are being put out there, that they're engaging them, making sure they do, and then supporting them, right, by prioritizing their communities, their diverse communities, and communities under pressure, like LGBTQ, like the Black community, Hispanic, Latinx community, and others, and then supporting them in the right ways. And sometimes it is just making sure accurate information is shared. And then, of course, we also want action and engagement and connection. Sometimes it's just by letting the ERGs be present, be visible in organizational meetings and team meetings, having a voice, giving an update. I had a manager at a prior company who, at the beginning of his monthly staff meeting, he would let everyone talk on the team. And I will tell you, by the way, one of my metrics forever when I do an all staff safe space meeting or team meeting of any kind, I have a metric, which is I always want every person in that meeting to talk. I want to hear every voice, right? So when we do roundtables, that's a big metric to me. It means we're going to be heading in the right direction if we can get input from everyone. And if everyone feels like their input matters. So that's just an example where right now, driving towards ensuring that accurate information is out there is going to make people feel safer and more supported. And also, we're in this divided time where it's really hard. Like the biggest challenge all my HR friends and I talk about is with the world so shaky, how do you make people feel stable?
Right.
And I think this is something that we know from working in HR. We can't save them and we can't solve for them.
Right.
But we can support them and share in the experience together and then give them agency, right? By saying like, well, the world is shaky, but people figure out how to get through that. And they do it together. And they do it with making sure the right information's out there, that you can bring and give voice to the right information. And then taking real action to support communities, sort of not just declarations, but real action, not just in Pride Month, but year round, right? Like we talked about earlier. That's sort of how I see it.
Yeah. And so I've also seen in the workplace, you were just saying it now about feeling safe and feeling respected and being able to just, feel genuinely a part of the fabric. And you talked about how people are, woven into the fabric and they can start to feel a little bit more safe. I talk a lot about when an employee joins your organization, people talk about it being a good fit. Brenda and I, we have a different word for fit. It's integration.
Yes.
And, when someone joins your culture and your team and your organization, it automatically shifts the culture, no matter who they are.
That's right.
And so when you have people with varying backgrounds and varying everything,
yeah,
that diversity of thought just makes it much more of a special place to work because you just have more experiences to pull from that others have not pulled from. And so that curiosity then starts to come up as a culture enhancer and amplifier. And you were just saying it, like we can't just do this during a month. We can't just focus on this during 1 month. This is something that as every person joins your organization and with people who are LGBTQIA plus, there's so much to learn and draw from. Even in our creative art, we work with a lot of creative agencies. They come up with creative ideas. That ideation is what they get paid for.
Yes.
And if you're not pulling from all that people bring to that table and they're not able to genuinely feel safe in that space, you're losing out. Like you're missing out on so much. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I love that. So you're touching on a core philosophy for me. So I believe that superpowers are real. And the reason I do is I was born sick as a kid. Doctors told me I'd be sick forever, but my parents said, don't believe what other people tell you, and you can do anything if you work hard enough. While I was sick, I started watching people really closely, and I figured out that each person was different and that their creativity came from their difference. So what that means, just to follow that math, every single person in the 17.5 billion people who've ever lived create in a exclusively unique way to every other person. So the superpowers that will come from their unique experiences, no one else is going to have. And you just described it. So the creating will be different. The perspective will be different. What's been learned and experienced will be different. And then it keeps changing. And so I think that if we look at it that way, that each person, so I love that you all said instead of fit, you say integration. So instead of fit, I say add. Like every time we're ready to hire someone and someone says, oh, they'll be a good fit. I'm like, no, they'll be a good add.
Right.
Because we need them to bring something different too. We don't want them to just bring more of the same. Right. So that, I worked at an organization many years ago in San Francisco that was naturally super diverse because of the people involved in the cultivating the culture. So it was a tech culture, but 41% women engineers, which was unheard of in San Francisco.
Unheard of, yeah.
And 5% trans, which was amazing. And what I saw was, and then they had this principle, this governing principle, which was choose wisely, but you decide what you want to do. So it inherently validated every single person who joined the organization because whatever they came up with was right, was valid. So it's like your unique perspective, right? And so when I was at Yahoo, I would onboard people every week. I mean, all the new hires. And we were hiring fast. We were hiring as much as we hired, I think in my first year there, we hired about 4,200 people. So there were hundreds of people every
Oh my
week.
gosh.
And I remember saying to them, you are here because of your difference. We want you to change at least half of what you find because we're transforming everything. And we've hired you because you're transformers, right? And what the feedback we got later, and the CEO, Marissa, would meet them too. The feedback we got later was they said that was just incredibly empowering to let them know, like, we belong and we're here to change things and take our difference and put that into play. So I think that is, I mean, that just goes such a long way to giving people that agency and that empowerment, and also to take risk, right? Because when you do something different, it feels risky. It is risky. We're all driven to want to conform, right? But then we're also driven to be different and unique and individual. And so we have to create opportunities for both. And, we get a lot of questions now about performative versus meaningful, right? About when somebody or a leader or a company is kind of just saying it, but maybe it's a holding pattern, maybe they're not actually moving things forward or taking action. And the reason that action's so important is because that shows if you really mean it, right? And so that shows if we're really invested, if we really care. And when times are tough, again, going back to original topics, will we be there, right, for each other in those moments? And so that's why I think it's really important to be transparent and say, this is what we're committed to. This is why we care about this community or any community or all employees or the LGBTQIA. And here's what we're doing to learn about it, to support it, and to advance it. Here are the actions we're taking. Here are the actions we're not, and then being transparent about why,
Yeah.
right? I think those things really make a difference. It's funny, throughout my career, when I'm coaching leaders on how to communicate directly and authentically, people say like, oh, but if I say this, everyone's going to be unhappy. And I'll say, okay, so then everyone's going to be unhappy. But at least they know you're telling them the truth and why.
Exactly.
Right? I remember one time I had to, after Verizon bought Yahoo, I had to go back to Yahoo's offices and explain a policy decision Verizon had made that the Yahoo employees were not going to be happy with. So it's 10,000 Yahoo employees unhappy and me on stage. So I wore like a black Chewbacca tinsel jumpsuit because I like to wear expressive things about the things I love, like Star Wars. And they appreciated that. Anyway, so I said, look, this is the deal. This is the way it is. The thing you've asked for, you're not going to get. And I explained why. I said, here's what you will get from Verizon. It's actually pretty good, but it's not the thing you wanted. And afterwards, someone came up to me, one of the employees, an engineering leader, and he said, I really was unhappy with that answer, Sandy. He said, but thank you for just telling us the answer
Yeah.
and explaining it, right? And not trying to spin it into, we don't know. We'll see. Like, that's where a lot of people think it's like, oh, you don't like what I'm saying, or you don't like my decision. That they can deal with. What's harder is if you're just not really telling them, so they
Yeah.
don't know. We all need to know, right? That transparency and trust that builds, and we'll take care of a lot of the other differences of perspective. But it did just remind me one more thing I want to riff on, which is what's really powerful too in validating people is I might be talking about a new decision we've made, and then someone in the audience or in our team in a meeting challenges it, validating that I'm glad they challenged it, discussing it, and if we decide their idea is better, saying, you know what, your idea is better, let's do that.
Yeah.
Nothing's more empowering than that.
So, for leaders and HR folks who are unsure of where to start, if you could leave them with one mindset shift about inclusive leadership and supporting their team, what would it be?
So the answer has 2 points to it. One is always ask them what they really need. If I could do the most helpful thing in the world for you right now, what would that be? If they don't know, you can say, what have you seen other organizations do for your friends where they work? What have you heard and thought, gosh, it would be amazing if we did that? Example, Lyft, earlier this year, the organization Lyft, right, rideshare, they gave trans people free rides after their IDs were suspended in Kansas. So maybe the employee will say like, wow, that my friend works at Lyft and they just did this amazing, amazing action to support a whole community that is under so much terrible pressure. I want us to do something like that. Right. And then you can work with them to come up with it. So asking and being prepared to figure it out instead of only wanting to just go to golden answers, I think is really important. But the other is always remind everyone, no matter how hardcore performance environment you are, that human first and that it's human, not machine, human, not asset. And that is as simple as taking the time in a one-on-one, in a team meeting, in a company-wide meeting to make sure human connection happens first and foremost. A lot of people have said to me in the last year about calling and asking questions about AI. And we just released an AI report as well, along with our social safety index and our TV report. So all the different things that monitor doing it fairly and inclusively. And so many people, as you both know and are dealing with too, have called or asked questions about AI. And they say, oh gosh, AI is going to be the reason to eliminate people's jobs. And I said, no, actually, it's more binary than that. The leader either thinks people are an asset or a human source of creativity. And if they think they're a human source of creativity, they will want everything to amplify that, including AI.
Right.
If they think they're just a cost asset, then sure, they might limit it, but AI is not the reason. It may
Right.
be the latest thing they use, but that's an attitude. And so, throughout my career, I've always made sure when I sought out a place to work that the CEO thought of people and humans as the core of the organization's identity, right? And their superpowers as the thing that would be the organization's power and future to make the world better. So, to your question, always ask them what's the thing you can do to help the most, and always make sure human is the thing they feel first and the most.
I love it. Thank you. And if they're ready to go even deeper than that, Sandy,
Yeah.
where can people learn more about you and the work you're doing and the work that GLAAD is doing, and not just at GLAAD, but beyond that?
So, yeah, thank you for asking that. I will tell you a few things. So, GLAAD's website, glaad.org, is a great resource. We were talking earlier about small companies and large companies. All organizations can get a lot of information off our website that has all the studies we've done, the corporate briefings, the best things to do. We do these monthly briefings for a lot of corporate partners, and then we post that on our site. So you can really go see all that information. Of course, you can reach out to us and we'll help you with it too. And there's lots of good free information as well. Um, and then as for me, you can find me on LinkedIn. And then I will be publishing a book on superpowers this summer. And I will keep you apprised when that comes out. It'll probably be on my website and GLAAD's and others. And it's really just all about the fact that everyone has that difference as a core of their unique superpower. And my goal is to activate all of them. And it's GLAAD's too, right? To make sure that we are being as human as possible, taking care of people, because advocacy, education, and training and helping to come to connect to people and then understand them more is the superpower that's going to move us from a rocky state of the world to a loving, creating, and building state of the world, which I know we're going to get to.
Beautifully said.
Yeah, thank you, but this was super fun, and I love the work you do and would love to help more in the future too.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you for joining us on Tea with HRT. We'll be sure to drop all the links that you've mentioned and all of GLAAD's resources in the description of our video, so our listeners can keep learning and taking action as we move past June. Before we wrap up, we have to keep our Tea with HRT tradition going. So Sandy, since you're our guest, you can go first. What do you have in your cup today?
So my cup, which of course is super powered, is, because I'm very on theme all the time, is a mushroom tea. It's Rise mushroom tea, mushroom coffee, actually. And I started drinking it 2 years ago. My friend Suzanne, our friend Suzanne, introduced it to us and lowers the inflammation, gets the brain going. It's an amazing creative way to start every day. So I love it.
Love it. And Allyns, what are
Wonderful. I'm drinking my usual decaf caramel latte because I am naturally this hyper. I don't need caffeine to get me through the day, but I love
Right.
coffee. And then this week, this episode's cup brought to you by Entreprenista Business Magic. We just opened up our box because we're once again an Entreprenista approved member. And so come see us, and got their cup there.
That's awesome.
And I have my usual, actually, I usually have an iced coffee today. I'm drinking a hot coffee. It's also caramel latte, Allyns.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And from all of us at Tea with HRT, here's to building workplaces where the spirit of pride continues every single day. Cheers.
Awesome. Thank
Cheers.
you both. Cheers.
Thanks for joining us on Tea with HRT. We hope you got some laughs, some insights, and maybe even a few things you can actually use. If you like this episode, subscribe, leave a comment, and tell a friend. Find us on social media. Links are all in the description. And let us know what you think or what you want to hear more about at tea@hrtransformed.com. Catch you next time on Tea with HRT, where work meets warmth.